So we're going to start by talking about some latitude and longitude, and what they are imaginary lines that crisscross the globe, and they allow us to pinpoint specific spots anywhere on the globe. So if you had to give directions in King William, you'd probably use streets and house numbers. So if you were telling somebody how to get to the Fast Mart, you'd probably say, well, you want to go on, it's the Fast Mart on 360. Well, and that would be useful. That would give them some information, but 360 is about 100, 150 miles long, all the way to DC and beyond. And so you'd probably need a cross street. So if you told them, hey, it's the Fast Mart, it's on 360, and where the intersection of 360 and Route 30 are. Now, with those 2 points, they have an exact idea of where that is. And that's kind of what latitude and longitude allows us to do, is pinpoint places, especially where there aren't any landmarks, any roads or streets that we could reference from. So that's where we're talking about today. What latitude and longitude look like, remember these lines are imaginary, don't go looking for them. So here you've got latitude, and the lines of latitude always run east to west or west to east. It doesn't matter, but they run in this direction, left to right, east to west. And you start out with the equator at 0, and then you move above the equator or below the equator. Okay, longitude, which is always comes second, right? So here you have 0 is the prime meridian. It's the main meridian. Okay, and everything is measured off of that when you're talking about longitude. And so when you put these two together, you have this grid section that I mentioned previously. Okay, so with the equator, you've got here is your 0 degrees latitude. And above that, this half is the northern hemisphere, and below that, this half is the southern hemisphere. And then here with your prime meridian at 0, you'll see that it runs through England and a little bit through Spain and France and Africa. So this side is the eastern hemisphere, and this side is the western hemisphere. So latitude is a measurement of a distance in degrees. It's not feet, miles, kilometers. It's degrees. That's why you have these little degree marks, and I'll show you exactly why that is. But the original word latitude comes from the Latin word latus, meaning wide. Okay, because you're looking how wide the globe is here. Okay, there are 90 degrees of latitude from the equator to each of the poles. So you can't have anything greater than 90 degrees latitude. Latitude lines are also called parallels. Okay? They're also called parallels because, as you can see, they're parallel to one another. Lines of longitude are not parallel because they meet at the north and the south poles. So if you hear somebody say lines of latitude or a parallel of latitude, it means the same thing. That's all fine. Okay, so they're sometimes referred to as parallels. The equator, of course, is the longest of all lines of latitude because it goes across the globe at the widest point. It divides the Earth, as we said, in half and is measured as 0 degrees. Okay, and here's where you can see where that degree is coming from. Okay, if the equator is 0, everything is an angle. That's why it's degrees. Everything is an angle from the equator to the center of the Earth. So there's 15 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, all the way up to the North Pole, which is 90 degrees latitude. So everything above this would be north latitude. Everything below the equator would be south latitude. Okay? So here we have 0 degrees, and you've got 15 here and 15 here. So just like on our number line, okay, you've got to tell people, well, which 15 degrees do you mean? 15 degrees north, 15 degrees south, 30 degrees north, 30 degrees south, and so on. You have to say that, okay, or else they'll might be looking for you up here when you're down here. So the first call in a latitude and longitude is the number of degrees and then north or south of the equator. So if you were right here, you would say 45 degrees north latitude. And that would be, again, like telling somebody the fast part is just on 360. That's good. That gives you half, but that 45 degrees goes all the way around the globe. So now I need to tell them where on that 45 degree line am I? Okay, so to find latitude, you start at 0, determine which direction you're going, north or south. And you can see all these are labeled north, all these are labeled south. So when you do your practice, that's what your practice should look like, okay? That first number should always have that N or S after it. Okay? All right. So we're not going to use whiteboards for this one because you're at home. So you're just going to say the answers out loud. Lines of latitude are what to the equator? Lines of latitude are what to the equator? They're above, they're below, they are parallel to the equator. And so latitude, even though the lines themselves are running east and west, left to right, they give direction blank and blank of the equator. North and south of the equator. And that's why those numbers have to have N or S after them. And if you go all the way up to the North Pole, the maximum number of latitude that you can have is 90 degrees latitude. So if you look at your answer sheet and you see that you put 120 degrees of latitude, you've done something wrong somewhere. Okay, and the equator always starts out with how many degrees? 0 degrees. Good. And that line across the center divides the Earth into how many equal parts? And of course, that's going to be 2 equal parts. All right, great job. Let's continue on to longitude. So now here's our cross street. So longitude is defined as a measurement of distance of degrees east or west of the prime meridian. So remember, I have to have north or south with my latitude. Now I have to have east or west with my longitude. And the word longitude comes from longus, meaning length. Okay, so here's my prime meridian. Everything east of the prime meridian is denoted with an E, and everything west of the prime meridian is denoted with a W. And if I look, I've kind of flipped the globe around. So half of a circle is 180 degrees. So whereas latitude, I can only get to 90, here with longitude, I'm cutting my circle in half. So my biggest number is 180. So if you come up with like 240 degrees of longitude, something's gone wrong. So if you go start here, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180 degrees west. And over here on the east side, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180 degrees west. Now, if you're right on the prime meridian or on the equator, because it's 0 and it's neither east nor west, you can just put, that's the one case where you can just put 0 degrees. Okay? So these are not parallels. These are not parallels. So you can see that they meet here at the North and South poles, okay? So you'll sometimes hear these called lines of longitude or just simply meridians. So this line, though, this 0 degrees, is the only one that is referred to as the prime meridian. If it's this line, it would just be, they would say, 30 degrees east, the meridian of 30 degrees east, something like that. Okay. And again, even though they don't always say it, you can tell because latitude will be denoted north or south and longitude will be denoted east or west. All right. The prime meridian divides the earth in half. It passes 0 through the community of Greenwich, England, which was one of the first observatories. So this Greenwich time here, the Greenwich Observatory, is 0. Okay, and you can see here from this graphic how it kind of looks. So you got 10, 20, 30. Sometimes they're in 10 degrees, sometimes they're in 15 degrees. Doesn't really matter. It's just whatever the particular globe is. So, there's 15 degrees east would be here, 25 degrees east would be here. Whether they break it into 5 degree, 10 degree, 15 degree, 20 degree marks really doesn't, matter too much one way or the other. You've still got the same amount of degrees from 0 to 180. All right. And you can see here again, here's what it looks like. Okay, so you're starting with 0, and here's that angle from the center of the earth. Okay, longitude lines to the left of the prime meridian give locations to the west, and longitude lines to the right give east. Okay. All right. We're not really going to pull out our whiteboards here. Longitude lines connect the blank pole with the blank pole. That's pretty straightforward, I hope, by this point. Set it a bunch. They connect the North Pole with the South Pole. So they are not parallel. Okay. The line of 0 degrees longitude, that starting point, is called the prime meridian. Longitude gives us direction, blank and blank, of the prime meridian. So they're running north and south, but what we are measuring is east and west of the prime meridian. And where we could go up to 90 degrees, that right angle, with latitude, halfway around a circle here, we can get to how many degrees? 180. All right. So here's what, again, back to our picture there. To find your exact location on a map, you need to determine which latitude and which longitude meet where you are standing, where you're at. Okay, when writing locations, latitude is always given first. Okay, so you would say like Miami, Florida is 25 degrees north, 80 west. And in short form, 25 N, 80 W. Usually I'll throw a comma between it, but you don't have to. Our Viking ship, if we're practicing, here's our Viking ship there. All right. So we are 5, 10, 15 degrees north. And that gives us our latitude. Now our longitude, we move over 5 degrees west. So 15 degrees north, 5 degrees west. That's going to be our first example. So what I'd like for you to do, pause the video, write down the rest of the examples here, and when you're done them all, play the video and we'll give you the answers. Okay, so hit pause now. All right, welcome back. We'll assume you have unpaused and you have your answer choices. And so here is the key.